It's game day for the final time in 2024. The Iowa football team will take the field. The matchup against Missouri, we break it down, talk some basketball, and some news and notes, including a couple of players that are not going to be available for the Hawkeyes. All today, Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button while you're there, or if you're listening on the audio side, 5-star reviews all helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Well, we made it after a long month of the anticipation for the bowl game. It is finally here. 1:30 Central Time kickoff. It's the Music City Bowl with Iowa against Missouri. We're going to talk about the matchup a little bit more, dive a little bit deeper, and some of the things that Iowa's going to have to do to get a victory in this one and pick up their 9th win of the season. Also going to talk some basketball here at the end of the program today with the women's team with the big win in Big Ten play as that reopened against Purdue on Sunday afternoon. And the Iowa men team, they'll be in action coming up this evening in their final non-conference tune-up before Big Ten play begins again as they'll take on New Hampshire. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we kick things off with a lot of football talk here today and plenty to get into. Let's start with some news and notes items. We also got some portal conversation to talk about coming up as well. But let's start with the here and now. And let's get to what we're going to see on the field and some of the storylines that are certainly playing out from Nashville. Kicking things off, something we talked about last week, Logan Jones is not going to be available for this game on Sunday. Kirk Ferentz relayed that officially it will not happen, that Logan Jones will be unavailable, the starting center for Iowa, and that means that Tyler Ellsbury is going to get an opportunity. And the great part about this, obviously, you don't want to lose a player like Logan Jones, who has just improved so much during the course of his career. And his 3 years starting, the growth that we've seen and now coming back for another season next year, how great that's going to be for that offensive line. You never want to miss a guy of that caliber. You don't want to miss a guy, that was a all-conference selection. You don't want to miss guys like that. However, not only Tyler Ellsbury has shown an ability to be really good backup, and at times, certainly early in the career, I thought there were times that he was better at center than Logan Jones. But that aside, you get an opportunity for Tyler Ellsbury to go out there now and get some tape. Tyler Ellsbury is not going to be an NFL draft pick. However, you put up some good game film here against a Missouri defense that is very good, 20th in the country overall in total defense this season. You put up some good game film here, coupled with the 4 or 5 starts that he's had in his career. Might even be higher than that. He's got plenty of reps, not a ton this year, but you're able to put that out there one final time. Maybe it catches the right eye, right? Gets that opportunity, is able to catch on somewhere, develop on a practice squad, whatever it is. Collect a check, make a little bit more money for playing the game of football. Not a bad thing. And good story there for Tyler Ellsbury. It'd be great to see him go out there and play really well in the final game of his collegiate career. A couple other guys that I was not going to be with in the matchup against Missouri. Seth Anderson got hurt again. Stop if you've heard this before. Seth Anderson is hurt. Apparently a couple weeks ago, yet another injury added to it. This kid just can't catch a break. And there's just certain players, whatever reason, that are continually banged up. And that's been the case for Seth Anderson. Beginning of the season, we were waiting. And that's the reason that we saw a lot of Jacob Gill and maybe more surprisingly, a lot of Vanderzee early in the season is because of injuries like to Seth Anderson. And here's another one. We've seen the speed. When he came back, he busted coverage a couple times and was able to get down the field and get open. Now McNamara underthrew him and overthrew him in the two, but that aside. Seth Anderson has speed. Seth Anderson has ability. Seth Anderson just has to stay healthy, and I don't think there's anything you can do. There's nothing that you point at and say that Iowa needs to change the way that they've done things for years and years in order to keep Seth Anderson healthy. Fluky, but whatever it is, that's a stinger. Because Seth Anderson, we've talked a lot about Iowa's need to go into the portal and add some more speed. In fact, we'll get to that in just a little bit. But Seth Anderson's a guy that has that speed. But with his inability to stay healthy, you can't count on him being there, I don't think, next season. You can't. Speaking of speed receiver, one of the guys that they were after, kid from Chattanooga, Sam Phillips, put together big numbers down at UT Chattanooga. He's visiting USC. Not good. Not good. All right. A couple other players are not going to be available for the game today. Cohen Entringer, not going to be available for the Hawkeyes. Entringer, another guy that, of course, was injured last season. Came back, I think, earlier than anybody anticipated from pretty major surgery and was able to be out there right away at the beginning of the season. He's been in a backup role, went in there a couple of times, including when Xavier Wampa was benched against Iowa State and a few other times. Wampa started to play better in the back half of the year, and Entringer's snaps started to dwindle a little bit after that, after seeing a ton towards certainly the middle of the season, and that started to dissipate as Wampa started to play better. But Entringer, another guy, got to get him healthy. He's going to be really important next year because not only is he a guy that's probably going to start either at the cash position or at a safety position, but the versatility that he also brings going to be really important out there. But the final one that's not going to be available for the game is maybe the craziest story. Trying to just the wording of it. So I went back, I read the transcript from Kirk Ferentz's press conference, and then I'm like, well, did I miss something? So I listened to it on top of it and found the video. I think that Chad Leistikow had of the Des Moines Register, regardless where I found it. But just if I missed something. So Kyler Fisher isn't going to be there. Kyler Fisher is a 6-year linebacker. Kyler Fisher's graduated. And apparently Kyler Fisher, there was something academically that he didn't fulfill. The terminology, the wording that was used by Kirk Ferentz is that he just missed getting back. Unmet eligibility requirement is what it says in the transcript. It just, what are we doing here? You know, if this comes from the University of Iowa, so be it. A guy didn't pass a class or missed assignment or whatever. It was a pass fail and just didn't get it done as a 6-year guy. Okay. But if this is like an NCAA, misstep, an academic, when's the last time you heard of any guy missing a game because of academics? We got guys transferring every year. We got guys transferring every semester. And this 6-year senior in his last opportunity to play a football game, he misses it. I don't know. I don't know. And again, the details are very murky on this. You're left scratching your head. What are we doing, right? What are we doing in college athletics that this has become a thing? But it has become a thing. So those are the players that Iowa will not be with for the matchup against Missouri. We're going to talk a little bit more about the matchup. Also, some portal news. Mark Gronowski, quarterback at South Dakota State for the last 4 years, has put together some incredible numbers. A lot of sense. Iowa getting involved with him. We'll talk about that. What's the game plan going to be here? And, well, in order to get a guy like a Mark Gronowski, what do we need to see in this game, matchup-wise, from the Hawkeyes against Mizzou? We're talking bowl game. We're talking transfer portal. We're talking Iowa football. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot, even though you're paying for it twice. Well, it happened with me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money has a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and how about this? Helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's those subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, it wasn't just the subscription tracker. I absolutely love that part of it, but also taking a look at the goals feature, trying to set that up. Hey, want to take the kids somewhere special coming up this year? We got that. My niece, she's going to be having her baptism in a couple of months. Got to save up that money to make the trip out there. You can set those goals and see exactly the money that you're setting aside with Rocket. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. facebook.com/lockedon. Trent kind of back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. A couple other things from the press conferences on Sunday leading into the game here Monday against Missouri. Mentioned Kirk talking about the eligibility issue. That was weird. Of course, he talked more about his love of bowl games, but a couple other things. Tim Lester, here's a couple things that he said. And I think it goes hand in hand with the importance of seeing what we see out of this passing game. Tim Lester was able to fix the running game. Tim Lester was able to get them competent offensively, something that they haven't been over the last 3 seasons. Tim Lester got them back to respectability, but the passing game still has warts, and that is still an area where Iowa is struggling to get momentum, get that extra pass catcher, get the quarterback that they want, get the momentum and get this thing back to at least a salvageable level. It's the passing game. Run game, great. Now, Caleb Johnson had a lot to do with that, no doubt, but the running game has been fixed. You saw that this season. And as we talked about at the beginning of this, so one thing that I've wanted to see, going back to the beginning of December, when we finally get to today in this game, is I want to see him air it out. Take some shots. Do some things that we didn't see throughout the course of the year. A, it's an exhibition. B, is this going to break your heart one way or the other? If Iowa goes out there and tries to throw the football around and it just doesn't work, here's the other component. C, we're going to find out if Brendan Sullivan, or at least have a better idea. I shouldn't say find out because that's not fair. But we're going to have a better idea if Iowa can go into next season with Brendan Sullivan as a starter and feel good that he can be the quarterback. Not the athlete, not the runner, but a full-time quarterback for this squad. He was great in the role that I was able to carve out for him this season. That red zone quarterback, using the ability that he has as a runner, the physicality that he plays with, using all of those components, that was great for him. But as you saw in the UCLA game, there are warts to him, and there's reason that Northwestern moved on from him as a starting quarterback. And a lot of the knocks are about reading defenses and making plays that just aren't there. Trying to do too much almost, if you will, in the passing game. And he can't afford that. You just can't. Laid across the middle, did it twice against UCLA. It's an ultimate no-no. And he did it twice, leading to 2 interceptions. So that's where we are. And when we talk about this passing game and what you need to see, because you go out there and you throw it around. And we're not doing the oop-de-oop here. We're not going to have them, if they run 65 plays, throw out 45 and run it 20. No. But get balance. If you get those 65 plays, 35 runs, 30 passes, how's that sound? Sounds pretty dang good to me. Just to see. And see if those wide receivers, there's somebody else that's going to pop. Without Seth Anderson out there, all right, let's go. Vanderzee's healthy again. All right. Is it Jared Bowie? Is it Howard? Can one of those young wide receivers step forward? You know what you got in Jacob Gill? A good, solid, dependable wide receiver. Well, what else is out there? Maybe it's a KJ Parker, a freshman this year. Remember, freshmen can play in a bowl game, not going to hurt their eligibility. You can play up to 4 games, and even if you played in 4, you can play a 5th in the bowl game now. This changing rules on the fly for college football. But this goes also hand in hand with Mark Gronowski. So Mark Gronowski has been the starter the last 4 years at South Dakota State. He was the starter when South Dakota State came in that ugly 7-3 game a couple of years ago. Since then, he's been really good because he wasn't great that day. Nobody was great that day offensively, as I think all of us remember. This is what Gronowski has done in his career. 10,309 yards, thrown for 93 touchdowns. He has rushed for over 1,700 yards, 37 touchdowns. So that's what you have. And that's a pretty good start right there, right? In his career, he has combined for 130 touchdowns, 93 through the air, 37 with his legs. He is not what you would call, he's not the runner that Brendan Sullivan is, but as a thrower. He has an incredibly big arm. He's a strong arm quarterback. You think of, obviously, what he plays in, home games in Brookings, South Dakota. Playing in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, different than the Missouri Valley Basketball Conference. The long runs that they made, including this year, getting the semifinals, championships the 2 years previous. It's played in bad conditions. And seeing him a couple of weeks ago in the quarterfinal round game, he's out there, got the shirt rolled up, got the sleeves up. He's a big, strong arm quarterback that can move a little bit. And not only that, remember, this is a guy that does have an opportunity. He would be drafted in this year's NFL draft. In today's environment of college football, though, it makes more sense to go out there, take a big check, and then either improve your draft stock or at least you got a nice nest egg and you'll still get an opportunity, maybe as an undrafted guy. Well, Gronowski would be drafted in this year's NFL draft, 2025 NFL draft. Might be 5th round, but he would be drafted. If you're Iowa, this is the guy. This is the guy that makes the most sense. He's attainable. That's where you start the conversation. Also has a wide receiver that's entering the portal. A lot of people thought he was destined for Louisville, and they're pumping the brakes on that a little bit. Bring him along. Hey, not a bad thing. Kid had 150 yards against Oklahoma State this year through the air as a receiver. But with Mark Gronowski, the intangibles, the leadership, the big, strong arm, if this is a guy that Tim Lester right away targets and says, yes, again, just like you did with Bo Pribula, go out there and make your best pitch. Finances should not be a major issue. Look, there are certain teams, Miami, Ohio State, there are certain programs that can blow Iowa out of the water, but not many. So make your pitch. And Tim Lester have that pitch ready. Why this is going to be different. Why what you did this season with the running game is going to happen next season in the passing game. And use this as a springboard right here. There needs to be proof of concept to get the Mark Gronowskis of the world. To get even average wide receivers. You have to show them something. There has to be something tangible that they can look at and say, yes, now I see it. I see what you're trying to sell. It has to happen. That's what you have to do. And that's why this bowl game's important. And maybe it's not Mark Gronowski. And maybe it's not wide receiver X, Sam Phillips. Maybe it's not those guys. But it is in the spring portal. Hey, take a look back. Look at that bowl game, what we were doing. And not with our full complement of pieces. Not with our running back. That was an All-American this year. Missing our starting center, who, by the way, will be back next year. What you can sell if you go out there with a game plan, not to just hang around, not to keep it close, not to have a shot in the fourth quarter. Go out there and prove something in the passing game. That's what we're looking for. That's why I believe this is going to be a big one. Lester said this in the press conference. Hopefully it shows up tomorrow. And I've been really encouraged by the last month watching the whole passing unit get better. They've been working on this. They've been putting in the work. He talked a lot about the timing, getting the timing down, the timing of the wide receivers, and all the elements that we talked about before the season began, all the motion that we're going to see, and the increase in that angle. Something that shouldn't be that difficult, but it proved to be by the previous offensive coordinator. And how that has led to improvements out of the offense this season. He also talked about that quarterback spot and talking about he doesn't think they're done. He'd like to have 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the room. They're going to have 4 as it's currently structured. How's this game going to go? Now, I go back to, I got to see it. I mentioned proof of concept. I want to see them chuck it around a lot. I want to see them at least try to do something a little bit more in the passing game and see how inventive Tim Lester can be in that. But then I remember who's on the sideline. I remember some of the game plans we've seen recently against good teams. Some of the shellackings that we've seen from Iowa, just getting absolutely run out of the building, not just about against the great teams, not Michigan in the Big Ten championship game the last couple of times, but some teams that are okay on the fringes of being ranked, in Iowa just not being able to compete. I don't think this Missouri team is that good. They're completely fine. That's what they are. They are a fringe top 25 team. They're 9-3, but they're not great. This is not an elite team. It's not a team that you should say, well, with a break here or there, they should be a college football playoff team. Absolutely not. They played a very easy schedule in the SEC, about as good as you can draw up, much like Iowa got in the Big Ten this year. They went 9-3 with it, but they were non-competitive against Alabama. Still, Brady Cook is a tremendous football player. He's a gamer, and even without Luther Burden, one of their top players, if not their top player, and very well could be a first rounder. If your team's looking for a wide receiver in this year's NFL draft, take a look at Luther Burden. I think you're going to like what you saw. Been a big fan of him. His going back to his days in St. Louis, coming out of high school. But they got some guys defensively. They're going to play much better, I think, than I think people maybe are anticipating out of them. They're built a lot very similar to Iowa, except they got a competent quarterback, a guy that has proven it throughout the course of his career in Brady Cook. Until I see this Iowa team against an above average squad be able to do much offensively, and now you take Caleb Johnson away, I just don't know how Iowa's going to score. I just don't know how they're going to get points up on the board. And that's what I keep coming back to. How do you get something up there? How do you get a couple of scores? How do you get a couple of long possessions? That's where I keep coming back to. And because of that, I just think the defense is going to wear down. I think you're going to see more issues on that side of the football again. The dink and dunk and just being able to make the makeables. And so many teams have been able to do that against Iowa this year. It's unlike what we've seen recently, and that's made it frustrating. But that aside, I keep coming back to the lack of offense. Prove me wrong. I would love to be wrong. I got Missouri winning it 24-7. That's where we are. Hope to be wrong. When we come back, we're going to talk a little basketball. Iowa women's team gets a win again in the Big Ten as they upend Purdue. We'll talk a little bit about the matchup and a different look from this women's team in this one. A lot of freshmen, not just playing, a lot of freshmen playing late. We'll talk about that, plus the men's matchup and their final non-conference game. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Trent Condon back with you one final time. Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Be back with you right after the game concludes with the Rapid Reaction podcast coming up late in the afternoon on Monday. And then going to be with you as well. I'm going to be hosting Sound Off on 1040 WHO. Travis Justice, looking forward to that, taking your phone calls and putting a cap on the season. After that wraps up, got men's basketball in action as well. Men's team takes on New Hampshire. And, we joke a lot about the non-conference schedule and some of the bad teams that Iowa plays. This one, they're really bad. There's bad teams that Iowa faces every single year. This New Hampshire squad that's going to make their way into Carver might be the worst out of the bunch. So they are currently in New Hampshire ranked 259th in the country at Ken Pomeroy. There are 359th, excuse me. There are 364 teams. They're 2-12 on the year. Their 2 wins came against UMass, Boston, a non-Division I team, and Endicott. Now, Dave Endicott was my freshman basketball coach. If they beat Dave and beat him by 14, that'd be impressive. I mean, Dave's got to be in his 70s now? 60s? 60s. Regardless, that's all they have. Some of the numbers from New Hampshire, they're 358th in offensive efficiency. Okay, that's really bad. Defensively, they're 326. They try to play relatively fast for a team this bad. Iowa needs to win this game by 100. Okay, not 100. Ken Pom has it, what was that, 31? Whew. I don't like laying big numbers. This might be one where I'm willing to lay it. Iowa, get healthy, get right. And most importantly for Iowa, we're going to see the return of Seydou Traore. Earlier last week, we heard from Fran McCaffrey that he's going to be back out there. And again, we've talked about Seydou. He is so important for this squad. If they're going to be different this year, going to be more than a bubble team. Traore, Thelwell, 2 incredibly important pieces to make that happen. And then finally, to women's basketball from the afternoon. And a couple of things. I mentioned the freshmen. And to see late in the game, in the fourth quarter, well, you start in the first half where the freshmen, Taylor Stremlow, Ava Hayden, Guyton, and Mulaney were out there. And for a while, those 4 had the best, by far, plus minus in the game. Plus minus can be a wonky stat, right? It's who you play with. You're on the floor during a run. That's obviously going to help in a big time way. But I found that incredibly interesting. But then also in the fourth quarter, Now, things weren't overly dicey by any means, but a run would have put Purdue back in the game. And yet, it was Lucy Olson and the freshman out there playing together. I think that says a lot. It also says something about the inconsistency that we've seen this year from some of the veterans. Sydney Falter's coming off a surgery, and I don't think she's still back to certainly 100%. I think there's still more that we can see out of her this year. Kylie Feuerbach has been really inconsistent this year. In the second half, she played much better, but in the first half, she struggled. Um, O'Grady, she led the team in scoring in a very balanced one. In fact, she was the only one in double figures. She had 12. We got 9 out of a Falter, 6 out of Feuerbach, 6 out of a Lucy Olson, 9 points from Stolke, 9 from Taylor Stremlow. I really like her game. Same with Mulady, who had 8. You go through, balanced effort, good solid team win. Turnover still high, concerning. Freshmen have to lead it for a while, can be concerning. I don't know. There's a part of this team that I really like, and I really enjoy watching them. But there's also times where these same concerns are starting to build up, and it leaves you a little bit worried because the Big Ten is going to be good. And yes, Big Ten play began here, but it's going to get much more difficult. Purdue's towards the bottom of the conference this year. Purdue's going to be a team that's going to struggle to qualify for the conference tournament. That's how down the Boilermakers are. You won it by 21. Don't want to overreact, but the inconsistency, not driving me nuts yet. It's something to maybe store away for a later date. We'll be back with you at a later date. Well, later today. Locked On Instant Reaction podcast after the Iowa Bowl game against Missouri. Let's hope we see some passing. Let's see some positivity. Let's walk out with the victory and prove me dead wrong. That's what we're looking for coming up. Be back with you on that one coming up right after the game. Also, a reaction then coming up. We'll have that for you on Tuesday to the men's basketball game against New Hampshire and get you set for Big Ten play. The offseason, portal season is here. We got a lot to talk about there. In fact, we're coming up to the final day of the portal being open. However, it's also a dead period right now, meaning that players cannot be going on visits. Well, they're able to go on visits again starting on January 1st. So you're going to hear more and more visits that are start to set up. And Iowa's got 2 at this point. Need more. Need to add more to this roster, certainly for next season. And they're going to be doing the work, and we'll be covering it from all angles here. Every time we got something for you, we'll continue to pass things along. Thanks for being with us. Hey, if you're in Nashville, enjoy it. Incredibly jealous. Great city, great town. And looking at the Hawkeye fans, definitely had the FOMO seeing the videos here the last couple of days. My cousin's down there, got a bunch of friends down there, having a great time. Enjoy it if you're there. If not, just hanging out at home, maybe even the office on a Monday afternoon. So be it. We'll be back with you after the game with a Rapid Reaction podcast. Again, thanks for being with us. Hit that subscribe button while you're there. Just takes you a moment and really does help us. If you're listening on the podcast side, a 5-star review, really would appreciate that. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again later today. Go Hawks.